Hello, everyone. It is about 42 minutes after 9 o'clock on this Thursday, and we've meteorologist Brian Good. Got an alert day update for you guys as we head into tonight, as we have another round of storms we'll be tracking. Good news right out of the gate here is that the daytime period today looks to be really nice. If you still want to get that mow in, still got some yard work to take care of, worried about school or anything like that, we're fine. Very, very quiet and very warm again, back well into the 80s as we head into this afternoon. So that's the good news to share right out of the gate. Now, the question, of course, is about what happens once we get closer to sunset and thereafter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you all the way through the setup with the scenarios that are possible as we see a storm system evolve. Now it's already on the radar, developing out of Missouri and Illinois, and how that gets into wave country all the way through the near sunset window, but especially as we head closer to midnight, that looks to be the most active time period, and then we're done. And I do not see any severe risk for a while after this. We have a nice little break coming our way. So fingers crossed on that one, but we got to get through tonight for sure. So let's start with the current setup outside, and as always, trying to walk in now, and then we'll get you into the setup for this evening on an hour-by-hour type of ordeal. Right now, as I mentioned, it is beautiful outside. After a bit of a cool night. I mean, we've had dry air move in yesterday. Boy, that wind was strong, right? I mean, 40 miles per hour constantly throughout the entire day. But that was dry air that filtered into the area, allowing for a very comfortable feel this morning. We're in the lower 60s, even a few 50s outside. But still, even that is closer to our highs for this 18th day of April instead of the low temperature. So already can tell things are a little off here today. All right, so the visible, or actually here's the radar. Don't worry about that, that's clutter. So let's get into the visible satellite, where we are starting to see some cloud cover beginning to build across southern Kentucky and head northbound. But as I mentioned, everything's going to stay quiet throughout much of the daytime window here. So let's widen the view out and let's see where this bad boy is. And at the moment, it is not producing any severe weather. This is a batch of showers and thunderstorms. It had a few cells that were producing hail last night that have already faded out, and this is kind of the leftovers at the moment. But you can certainly see where the low pressure is. Again, they're not always a perfect circle like you see on a weather map. This is a little more elongated, but this is going to be the general track right across Illinois into Indiana, as we end later on for the evening hours through about midnight, and then it will race quickly off to the east. It will have a cold front that is right here, that is attached on the southern flank. The front will actually tilt and become a little more horizontal and get draped in the east-west fashion, mainly across Tennessee. That was the key factor on how thunder over Louisville would play out earlier this week, would that front tilt over Kentucky and get stuck, or will it tilt and then sink to Tennessee? Now it looks like it'll go to Tennessee, so that's some good news there. The bad news is we got to deal with the main low moving in for that severe threat. So a couple of things we've got to watch. I mentioned that the dry air came in yesterday, allowed for that very windy setup. Pretty day, but windy. That dry pocket of air is currently setting in an arc roughly across Kentucky, Indiana, and into Ohio. This is our protector. This is our shield right now. There's no way anything's going to get through that. Meanwhile, the moisture is trying to already build ahead of the low across areas of the Ozarks into Missouri. And if you look at the animation, now we don't have any images of the clouds until the sun rises, of course, and that lights up the cloud cover. Now we could see the general motion towards St. Louis, that there is a surging going northbound. We can track that on dew points as well. We talked about dew points yesterday, and you can see where there is that moisture trying to get pumped all the way into the show me state at this hour. This is one of the key factors we're watching tonight, but I think it's likely the key factor, because if we don't get a lot of that moisture to return ahead of the system as it moves in, these thunderstorms just will rapidly weaken as they head east. So I do think that Missouri and Illinois, West Kentucky and Southwest Indiana is likely to get severe weather today. I don't see much going in their favor that would tame down that idea. So it's very likely that they're going to be active here this afternoon. And with the moisture return showing up already in that area, moving into the southeast Missouri area, into Illinois, that's already setting the stage for what will happen for them. The question I've got for us into wave country, and especially this is going to be true along the north of I-64, is the idea of this dry pocket that is located right now over the area. Will that moisture return work its way all the way and keep curling? Let me redraw this. Will it keep curling around and feed right into the I-65 corridor as we head into this evening, basically going with the storms. The storms head east, will that moisture flow continue to stay ramped up ahead of it, and that would allow them to continue to have a severe potential as they head east. This has got a limit to it. Because once we get into later into the night, eventually they're going to cross over because they're moving too fast. Once severe wind, especially in thunderstorm complexes, once the straight line wind part of it takes over, they begin to move fast and they get too excited in some cases and move too fast. And they outrun the support that's been behind them the whole time and allow them to be severe. They just outrun it, and therefore they have no choice but to fall apart. That scenario is going to happen tonight. It is going to happen tonight. They will outrun their source. So once they outrun it, then it's downhill from there as far as them disintegrating and weakening rapidly. Now, in this scenario, which we face many times, usually we face this more in the summer, not so much in April. This is almost like Minnesota weather, too. This is what they face in the summertime. But when the storms do weaken like that, and we call this a cold pooling effect, the damaging wind part still can go longer and faster and cause problems, even though the entire line is starting to weaken. The wind is the last thing that's going to calm down. It's like running downhill, right? And trying to put the brakes on. It's tough to do that. You got to wait for a moment because you're already going downhill. That's the same scenario with these thunderstorms. They're going to be moving so fast that there will be a damaging wind threat that will likely just keep going a bit longer. And that's the reason why a lot of you watching right now in Wave Country are in this severe risk, is for that weakening phase, but still a damaging wind potential that will linger as it gets closer to I-65 and therefore to the east. Now, I said I-64 earlier. It was a question, and I did that on purpose. The reason for that is that south of the parkways, you did not see a dramatic dew point drop last night. So you're actually in a spot where some of these cells that move in tonight, they will likely outrun on the northern side. The northern side of this line is likely going to weaken as it moves in, but the southern part may not weaken as much. So if you're in Kentucky, and especially south of Louisville, your potential to hold on to severe weather warnings of some type will likely linger a little longer than, say, Louisville or Indiana will, because you've already got the moisture in play. So that's a little easy. We just don't know about Louisville and Indiana yet, how far north, because that little turn of moisture, the dew point, to get it into our area is not scheduled to happen until about 5 p.m. today before it will start to show up. So that's a very narrow window of reaction time for us, but we're trying to at least make sure you're aware of what the scenario is. This is the broad description I'm giving you guys of the elements that are on the table. What we're looking at that could go wrong or go right, depending on how you look at it, glass half full or half empty here. But the situation on the severe part, again, is not locked in because there's some things that could shake things up in a good or bad way. But I right now do not see this being a significant event for our area. I do think, though, that Missouri, Illinois, West Kentucky, and perhaps even Southwest Indiana, they'll have more to worry about when it comes to damaging winds and even isolated tornado than what we're going to be facing here. All right, so that's the general setup. And again, when you add moisture in the air, you also add instability or your fuel. And that is how we measure that in CAPE. And you guys know the colors, hopefully, on this by now. Gold is the more intense fuel, not the red. The red is actually the weaker. So we've got some fuel there, but you can see, I don't want you guys to focus on the intensity of it so much as you're looking at the motion of it being pulled north into Missouri. So everything's being played out, right? The stage is being set for the severe weather. And here's the severe risk that is out from the Storm Prediction Center. You can see that right at that point in St. Louis, that is where the marginal, or the enhanced risk is located. And I'll have a clearer image of this in a second. But right in this area, right ahead of the low pressure, where the fuel is already surging in. You can see that line right there of the Cape pushing right into Missouri. So the stage is set for them to have an active afternoon and evening for them. But notice the categories drop off fairly quick. You get to I-65, it goes to a slight, and you get east of 65, it goes to a marginal. And it's for the very reason I just told you, is it outruns its source and weakens rapidly. Here is a clear look at that image. You can see that. So this hasn't changed in the past about 20 hours or so, the outlook. There's only been a minor little shifting here and there of the categories to be expected. But I know you're going to ask, is this going to be an enhanced risk all the way over here? I don't see that happening. The only way that would happen is they would have to move way faster, because the other thing that works against storms moving in a time period like we're talking tonight, late evening to midnight, is the sun has already set. So that cape, that red area that I was showing you surging north, it starts to naturally just fade off the map because there's no more heating from the sun. And we're in the middle of the night now. So that works against the storms and causes them to weaken rapidly. So the only way you can get storms to stay very intense and get that enhanced risk, some of you are severe weather fanatics. I totally understand that, meteorology gurus out there. The only way that would go more east is that they would have to get here earlier. Getting here at 11 o'clock at midnight, they just don't have the time to do it. So I think where the map is placed makes sense, and it lines up with all the data we're looking at on timing, so all that makes sense. Again, the only way that would change is that they would have to move a lot faster, and right now there's no sign of that taking place, although bow echoes, especially when they have the little bowing segments, the bow outward, almost like a backward C shape, letter C. They do tend to move faster than models say, so there will maybe some areas that may see that get further east than expected, but right now a widespread concern on that is not there, which is good. All right, let's break this down a little more. Here is the tornado potential. Always seems to get the most attention, and there is a chance for tornadoes. The wind shear is actually not that strong with this system. It was way stronger yesterday. I mean, we actually had tornado parameters yesterday afternoon that were some of the highest I've seen this season over wave country. But did you guys see tornadoes yesterday? No. The dry air prevented it from happening. We dodged a big bullet yesterday because if we had moisture in the air yesterday, we would have been in a lot of trouble with several tornadoes. This is a setup where now we're getting the moisture back, but we don't have that extreme wind shear that we did yesterday. So it's kind of trading out. That's a good thing. I'm not complaining. These are the type tornadoes that are more your quick spin ups that can form. Usually don't get large ones in this scenario. I think the bigger issue here is going to be the damage and wind threat. So a closer view of the tornado risk, again, very low end, and it's the same idea as the categories, a little more of a ramped up area to the west where you're in the more heating of the day, and then it fades out the more east you travel. Here's your damage and wind threat. Technically, it's 58 miles per hour for a warning. These storms with straight line winds, I can easily see them being a little closer to 70 miles per hour for straight line wind. People always are concerned about tornadoes, understandably so, but these straight line wind events cause more of a problem in a more widespread area because you can end up taking down a whole line of trees or a whole line of power lines, and you have more of an issue versus tornadoes tend to hit certain spots and areas when it comes to damage and power lines. But straight line winds can cover several counties at one time, and that's where you end up with more problems with power. So make sure you're ready for that. Get everything charged up. Okay, here's your hail potential. There is some hail potential if we get some cells to form that may pop ahead of this line. That risk is low. Otherwise, the main line itself, you're going to get basically smaller hail out of this, not larger. That larger hail threat is going to be back to the west. All right, so let me plot the latest high-res model here, and I'll get to some of your questions, so hang tight with me on this, all right? I know there's a lot of you here. This, again, is looking at moisture. So this is the dew point. Typical dew point, once we get to about 60, it gets our attention. You get to 70 for a dew point, you really need to pay attention. If you get anything higher than that, then you just might as well just get ready for, well, more than anything, flash flooding that is going to happen. But 60 is roughly the benchmark. Not always, but for this purpose, we'll just say 60, okay? So you see the dew points do start to climb into that range southwest of Louisville. Louisville is at 50, still in the 40s for dew points this afternoon. So still very dry and warm. We get to 5:30. Dew points closer. All right, Louisville did jump up to 57. Not quite there yet, but here we go. Now we're into the mid-evening time period. Now timing, and you guys are going to ask us a lot about when will they start, when will they end kind of thing. The challenge that this system has, as I mentioned, there will be some cells that may form in a line that actually will be extended southeast, almost like a warm front. There will be some cells that will start to pop in advance of this line. The models don't know yet what to do with them as far as when to pop them and where they will track. It's just possible they will form. That will mess up the timing, though. So if you're, say this model run is right, this would mean then at Meade County, you would start your thunderstorm threat at 11:30 if you go by that. But Louisville would still be waiting, perhaps to midnight or later. So these individual cells can mess up the timing if they indeed pop. The other thing that can mess up timing tonight is I mentioned the bowing segments. Once these things begin to bow outward, They can accelerate rapidly, usually traveling about 50 to 60 miles per hour. In this case, they should be heading to the east-southeast at that rate, and the models don't always capture that. So what we've done is try to add about an hour in advance of everything we're seeing here to account for a faster motion idea as a cautionary step. That's basically what we're doing, is adding an hour. But in general, you get to sunset, you need to be ready. The skies should already be overcast at that point by sunset, as thunderstorms should be on the radar back into Evansville and West Kentucky and getting closer. You get to the 11 o'clock news tonight, probably going to be an active 11 o'clock news as these storms roll on through. Looking at this scenario, this is where you got, again, your Boeing segment. You've got your individual cells moving across Indiana. Let me advance this. Now, here's what's interesting is look at the radar here on Futurecast at 2 a.m. It's got an arc of what will still likely be some very strong winds, now past Louisville at this point at 2 a.m. And then you've got a band of moderate rain behind it. That is the first signal that I've seen in between 11 o'clock and 2 that this does what we call cold pooling, where it runs out ahead of its source because there is a gap right here that forms. It detaches. So the idea of them cold pooling out is pretty likely and weakening as they approach 65. But I mentioned sometimes they don't weaken as fast as we want them to, so they can still produce wind damage. That's why we got the alert day out. I would say, especially along west of 65, you're going to be in that risk. So where the Storm Prediction Center has the outlooks at makes sense right now. As far as any tornado threat, again, you can get in the individual cells, but you can also get them here, a little bit of an apex, anywhere on that backwards. Hold on, I lost my mouse. There it is. On this backwards C. I don't know why this computer is giving me fits today. It's not Friday. Not time for you to be complaining. Okay. Individual lines could form, or individual cells that can rotate on the northern side of the backward C. So this is the C here, and you can also get them on the southern end. Basically, where there's a little bit of a wiggle in the line, you can get some quick spin-ups. But again, they're usually brief, but hey, a tornado is a tornado. I get it. But they usually don't last very long. They're very quick, and they move along. I still want you guys to understand, though, that the straight line threat of wind is more of our concern, not the tornado threat. And then once it passes by, it's just heavy rain for the rest of the night. So here are your chances on this. This is the entire event as far as rain and thunderstorms, but the red part is the period that we need to be focused on for any possible warnings. All right, we'll start that roughly at about 9 o'clock. It'll ramp up near the 11 o'clock news to midnight, and then we'll begin to taper it down after the midnight. After the first wave hits, you're out of severe risk, you're done. So it's only really just a couple of hours that you need to be ready for the storms, and once that passes on by, you're fine. It's just rain and lightning for maybe another 3 hours after that. And some of this is going to be very heavy rainfall moving through. But as we always say in this scenario, because it is a nighttime event, we have to rely heavily on the radar data versus our SkyTrack cameras, spotter reports. All that gets limited at night. We have just the technology to go with, and that's it. So we have to babysit the radar carefully in this scenario. And your reports help too. So we appreciate your reports, especially if you get any wind damage or anything. Let us know when it's safe to do so we can relay that on to the Weather Service, and then therefore they can warn people in advance of the line that this system has indeed produced damage. It helps people out ahead of you. You all help each other out. And so we appreciate that. Okay, so let me get to some of your questions. Let me get rid of the spammer first. And let me get to some of your questions you've got. I'll start at the bottom because I may have already answered a lot of it. All right, Amanda. So over these storms at night doesn't help the anxiety. Yeah, I get that. The only good thing about this is not one of those all-nighter kind of things where we got to wait and we're not dealing with supercells forming at 4 a.m., that kind of issue. This is, of all the severe weather events that we face, this is actually one of the easier ones as far as handling anxiety for, because it's easy to track because it's formed already. You can see it move in. You know when it's going to hit because we'll be on the air telling you it hits, and then as soon as it passes by, you can go to bed. So it all happens fast. Within, I would say, the time the storm enters your county and passes through your county is going to be less than an hour. So that part is good on severe weather like this. You don't have to worry about being up all night worrying. You only have to just wait for it to pass your county. So I hope that helps somewhat, Amanda. Okay, let's see. Devin, okay to drive tonight, leaving Jeffersonville at 10, going to J-Town. Yeah, it's okay to travel. Just keep an eye on the Wave Weather app, and you will be able to see where the storm is at that point. You don't want to be ahead of that Boeing segment. If that's coming in, wait. And as I just said, you don't have to wait long. All right. So if you don't have to travel right at 10, you can wait until like 11 or whatever the case is. Or if you know by traveling that you can get to J-Town before that even gets to the area, then by all means, yeah, you have time to get ahead of it and get to your safe spot. We'll have specific times, though, as we head through this evening. Once this, again, forms, it's a lot easier for us to track. We can put times on it. We know the forward motion on it. Our systems then can estimate times of arrival at that point, and we can start getting more specific. So that makes it a lot easier when we get to that point. Jen, it's so pretty. I know. We've been lucky, though. This has been a really nice weather pattern, right? I know the severe weather hasn't been fun, but I have a stretch of 80s like this in April is very unusual. I don't think I've seen the grass be so green over the years. Okay, Jacob, how much rain are we expecting? Well, that depends on the thunderstorm complex itself. Some areas that see kind of repeated rounds and have your higher dew points will easily get over an inch of rainfall. Those of you that get the weaker end, and I still right now, the Indiana portion to Louisville keeps showing up as the one of the sections of the line that wants to weaken the fastest versus the southern part. And mainly for the reason I just told you is that your dew points have already there. They're a bit elevated already in southern Kentucky. So you're already primed for what will happen tonight. Kentucky and Indiana, we got work to do as far as the atmosphere getting to that point. But I do think that also means that they would weaken faster here. But I would say less than a half inch in the weaker side. And then if you're in the stormier side, you're likely going to get over an inch of rain. Hopefully nothing more than that because some areas have had some decent rain lately. So more than an inch would start to bring in some flooding issues. Okay. Brandon, after this, you can keep the severe risk for as low as you. We'll work on that. All right, got you, Brandon. Another Brandon. So many Brandons. Will a low-level jet help storms tonight? It would, in the sense, if it were angled in the right direction. Again, the system is tilting and becoming horizontal, so you don't have a subtropical jet that's racing straight from the Gulf of Mexico into wave country. The entire system is kind of tilting on itself. So in this case, no. The low-level jet is not going to play as much of a role as you normally would expect it. It did last night in Kansas City for them because the way it was angled, but the way it is tonight, it won't be angled to be as a huge concern there. But good question. Okay, let me try to get back up to the top here. Mark. Looks like the HER has discrete supercells to our west. Guess they won't make it this far to the east. No, and you know what? Let me bring up that model real quick because this is another point I wanted to make. And actually, let me show you a different model. Hold on. Let me do this because I meant to do that anyway. This is a little wider range. This is a different in-house model that we got. It's got all the fuel plotted there at 630. Let me advance this. Okay. What could happen too if you get cells that form out of Tennessee around Bowling Green, they are going to get pulled rapidly northbound. What they will do is when they get pulled northbound, they're going to disrupt the northern part of the line as well. That will also aid in kind of disrupting its flow and messing up its vibe. And therefore, if they pass it quick enough, they would miss the Boeing segment that would be moving out of Illinois. So these cells would rapidly move ahead of it and then combine to the rain on the northern side and just really disrupt it to where by the time it moves into Louisville, it's weaker. But because they zoomed on past the southern part, then the Boeing segment could move all the way into Louisville. But look how quickly this in-house model just, look how quickly that weakens. I mean, you got that, all the fuel at play, and you got some Boeing segments, severe weather, and then suddenly you get past midnight, and look at that. Now, this model tends to decrease storms a little too fast, so I'm taking it with a grain of salt. But I think for illustration purposes, I think you guys, in storytelling, I think you guys get what I'm trying to say here. Worse, Illinois, Missouri, Southwest Indiana, West Kentucky. That's not wave country. That's west of us. We get the leftovers of its weakening phase. So we're in a better spot than they are, and East Kentucky is in a better spot than we are. Any other questions? Let's see. All right, I think everyone's okay. Bryce, how you doing, Bryce? E-Town would somewhat be a little more primed. You're right on the edge there, Bryce. At Bowling Green to Adair County, Greensburg, Campbellsville, basically there. There's not much of a surge upward that needs to happen, but therefore should maintain any Boeing segment a little longer. But E-Town's right on the edge of that, Bryce. So there is a chance that you could be right on that Boeing segment, that apex that could carry that damaging wind threat to the other side of 65. That is possible. So you may hold on to that threat a little longer. But that's based on what we're seeing now. We're going to be tracking. This is one of those nowcasting things we call it. We're going to just literally look at everything on the radar and observations we're getting from Illinois, all the weather stations, Illinois, Missouri. We have a visible satellite. They're launching weather balloons today in St. Louis, Wilmington, Ohio, and Nashville, Tennessee. We do not launch weather balloons in Louisville. We haven't done that in years. But they will be launching their network. They did this morning. They'll have probably one for the afternoon. And that data will help us too in determining the amount of dew points and how long this could easily progress to the east. But there's very few models out there, very few pieces of data I've looked at that have severe weather just racing through wave country all the way east of 65 to Lexington. There's very few that have that. In fact, maybe one. Most, 90% of the others I've looked at weaken this rapidly. So that's the reason why we were hesitant on the alert day yesterday. We wanted to look at today, and it's hard to ignore the idea that areas near and west of 65 could still get wind damage. So we don't want anyone to get caught off guard, especially as you make your plans this evening and head to bed tonight. We'll make sure everyone's safe. But I think this one's going to happen relatively fast and be out of our hair. After this, I'll get real quickly out of your hair because I got to get ready for midday. As we head into thunder, there is a chance for some high deck of clouds to move in. Some of the models are trying to spit out some moisture. I think the air is going to be too dry, but not a lot of change for thunder. I think it'll still be in the lower 60s and kind of passing deck of clouds every once in a while. Don't forget the practice show is still expected to happen tomorrow in downtown. So that should be on track. Frost potential, Laura, I saw your comment. Yes, there is potential. Very low end right now, Monday morning, but there is some potential in the extended that keeps showing up. So if you can hold off, let's get past Derby Day. I think it'll be all right. But there's a few close calls that show up in the extended. I don't see a lot of 80s down the road, guys. It's a lot of cool weather that is coming our way. All right, guys, appreciate you as always. Again, as soon as I end this, it's going to replay back on social media, and we'll have this, of course, on the app if you need to watch it back, if you missed what I said, so you can catch back up. Once again, you can even scroll through it, so you can go faster than what I was talking. Okay, stay safe. We're going to have updates throughout the day today on our newscast, obviously, and if anything significant changes, I'll be back on here this afternoon, but I do not anticipate anything significant to change right now. But we're going to take it hour by hour, guys, and enjoy the day. I mean, don't this be a total bummer, right? It's going to be a nice day. It's going to be the 80s, our last 80-degree weather for a while anyway. Enjoy the 80s. Take your allergy meds. Look both ways before you cross the street. What else? Eat your vegetables. Be kind to your elders. Respect your elders. There you go. See you guys later today.